Welcome to the First Act Break podcast, the show where we dive into the art, business, and hustle breaking into the film industry. Today we have Octavian, who is a USC film director with a long history of acting and film directing. Super excited to have you on the show.
Happy to be here. I love that you threw an acting on that. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, that's actually going to be the first thing we talk about in today's episode.
Okay. Yeah.
I was in 7th grade, and I was binging this show that I loved. Called
I watched that show when I was in 7th grade.
The
too.
Flash.
Yeah, I watched it with my
really?
my dad. Yeah, all of it.
So, okay, there's a character in there
Yeah.
that kind of just like I didn't really like think much of, but like I noticed, and it was a key part of the story. And then years later, I'm in class with this man named Octavian, who I look up, and he was the actor for that character, which blew my mind. So talk a little bit about like your experience on The Flash, and how did you
because I was the young version of the main villain in season 2. They do like a flashback at the end of the season to like the whole scene is really dark. It's this like it's basically a kid who watches his dad like come home from war and kill his mom, and then gets sent to an orphanage, and it's like this scary gothic place, and he has a horrible childhood. So I started acting when I was like 12 or 13 years old because I wanted to get on film sets, because I knew I wanted to be a director and I wanted to make movies, but you know they don't really let kids on set. And so I started acting, and I did just a few kind of one episode TV parts like that, and then a lot of voiceover stuff.
So how did you like get into this specific project?
It's for The Flash. It was just an audition like anything else, pretty much.
Wow.
I had never seen the show. I watched it before I auditioned for it. I watched it, and then after I got it, I like watched kind of the rest of it. But I haven't seen it since, to be honest. Although I won't say that. I've heard season 2 is a real peak. So that's on me.
How many seasons was it run for?
Oh,
5?
God, I don't know. You might know better than me.
I thought it was 7, to be honest.
7?
It went for
I
a
stopped
while.
watching after like season 3 or 4, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was very successful.
That was my introduction to DC, to be honest. The Flash. That was like one of the first DC things I watched.
Yeah.
But you know, I do know that your history with film didn't start there, because there's this film called Kids vs. Aliens.
Holy fuck! Who told you about that?
That-
Wait, can we swear on this, or is this
you
family
can-
friendly?
you can-
bleep it out.
You can
Sorry
say
about
whatever
that.
you need.
Did I tell you about that?
I was doing research, you know, like, and
It's probably somewhere on my like IMDb or something
Maybe.
my parents wrote. That was grade 2. Yeah, grade 2. I
2nd grade.
in 2nd grade.
Wow.
For the Americans in the room, I've got a group of like friends together, and the whole thing. I mean, I started loving movies because of Jurassic Park and like Super 8, and you know, I really like that kind of adventure sci-fi movie starring kids or like something like that.
Yeah.
And so that was my first little opus of. I think we had a lot of ideas because we would get together in class and at like recess and stuff to draw pictures and like talk about it. I think there was a whole story, but what it manifested as was about 10 minutes of camcorder footage of just kids screaming and running around.
I love that.
It's great. I've still never topped it. I think.
I think you're probably the youngest person to direct a movie that I know. Really, at 2nd grade, that's crazy.
Was that your first thing that you've ever made in terms of film?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. Because I saw Jurassic Park when I was like 5 or 6 years old, and there was the shot where the T-Rex, his head comes through the roof of the Jeep, and the kids are there and like holding it up, and that was like I remember that exact moment in the movie when I saw it for the first time was me going like, oh, I want to make movies, because I saw
amazing.
kids,
And you were 5, 6 years old?
I think I was 5.
That's
awesome.
insane. That is crazy.
Yeah, because I saw like there were kids with this giant monster, and it didn't. A lot of my friends really liked dinosaurs after that movie, but my head went to like, oh my god, that's like fake, and they made that. That looks like so much fun.
Right.
And there's kids kind of my age, a little older, but getting to have so much fun with these like monsters.
I think when I was 5, I didn't even know like something like a camcorder
Right.
existed, or it could be something that I could use to make
Yeah.
short films on.
No, I mean that was my parents. My dad won a camcorder at like work or something from some random work contest, and he just gave it to me. And so I started like filming. I was in a bowling league as a kid. It was
Oh my
really
God.
cool.
Uh-huh.
I had a lisp and I was in a bowling league, and and so I started just filming me and my friends bowling. It's really, I think I still have that footage somewhere, but I started doing that, and then I was watching more movies, and then so I've wanted to do film for literally like longer than I can even remember, to be honest.
That's awesome that you.
That's really
Yeah. Would you say Jurassic Park is like the main inspiration for you, or was there something else that
Um,
also pushed you to make more films?
I mean,
after
it's
the
one that
first
I always love. I think I've changed a lot in the last like 10 years, especially. But yeah, it's always one that I go back to for a lot of fun and for inspiration on like shot design. Definitely, I watched Jurassic Park before I storyboard every film that I've ever done.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
It doesn't even necessarily inform all of them. It's such a beautiful movie, and it really gets me jazzed to make movies still. So
You do have like a Spielberg kind of style. I feel like a lot of people think that.
yeah, no, that is something that in the last couple of films that I've done for sure. Yeah.
I remember freshman year you made a stop motion film, which was the first stop motion film I saw the cohort like do,
Yeah.
right? And I do know that I think you started making stop motion films when you were in India in 2011. Like,
Yeah.
tell me about that story.
So my parents, my dad was already working in India, and he was kind of traveling back and forth. And my parents are really adventurous people, and they were kind of tired of Vancouver, like the big city, and so they decided, screw it, let's just sell everything and move to India for a year since he's working there already,
Right.
and then we'll just figure it out after. Which I didn't register because I was an idiot child. I didn't really know how crazy that was at the time. It was just like, oh, cool, we're leaving. But it was insane. And so we spent a year living in India, and yeah, I made a lot of stop motion stuff because that was when the iPad 2 came out. And for all of you listening, the iPad 1 didn't have a camera. Only the iPad 2 had a camera. And I had an iPad 1 because my uncle gave me and my sister iPad 1s for Christmas, which was really nice. And then the iPad 2 came out, and we kind of swapped them in for that. And that was around the same time that we went to India. And so that's why, because now all of a sudden I can make movies on the iPad, because I had an iPad 2. And that was the last iPad I ever owned. But so that was really exciting. And so I would use like iMovie and stop motion software, but I didn't understand what editing was. I still, for some reason, I would always like pause movies when I was watching them. I would watch them on my iPad too, and I would pause them right at cut points because I don't know why I thought this. I thought there was like a frame of black in between every shot, and if I paused it at the right time, I'd see where it changed over.
Oh.
No one told me that. I just believed it for no reason.
Right.
And so I would sit there for like half an hour sometimes, just like trying to pause it at the right time. And when I first like got on iMovie, I don't know what I thought it did, but I didn't understand the concept of editing. So my sister and I, we made like a Harry Potter parody movie with our dogs who we adopted in India and then brought back to Canada. And we made this little I think it was called Fluffy Potter, I think. And it was a little Harry Potter parody that was 25 minutes long, and that we had to rehearse like a play, and we did like 12 takes of it because 12 minutes in we'd screw up and then be like, fuck, we have to go back to the start. And then we spent an entire day doing that, finally got one that worked, showed my parents, and they were like, oh, why don't you just do different shots? And I felt like a idiot.
No, that's
And that's how I learned what editing was, which was
that's
really exciting.
And now you are one of the best editors I know, and you edit for a huge YouTube channel, right?
Yeah, that's what I do for work, is I edit for a YouTube channel, which is really great. It's the best gig ever. It's so cool.
Wait, I do want to hear you talk about that. Like, how did you get this YouTube editing gig? And
Yeah, I edit for a YouTube channel called Pretty Much It, which is a comedic commentary YouTube channel. They watch movies and record commentary tracks under it. It's my boss, Eric. He watches movies with like his comedian friends, and they make jokes and sort of make this audio commentary track that I take and I cut down to like a 10 to 20 minute highlight reel of the funniest moments in there. Some of the funniest moments get cut, but their whole kind of business is around selling the commentary track. They have a Patreon that they use, and the highlight videos, what I do is for YouTube, and it's kind of the promotion for that.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, I got into it because I was I just watched the channel for like 4 or 5 years. It was one of my favorites, and then they put out a call for editors. And
wow.
And so yeah, I got super lucky because I wasn't even really fishing for a job. It just showed up, and I was like, this would be awesome. And so I put a lot of work in my application and made it really good. And
That's perfect timing.
yeah,
How long have you been doing it for?
I've been doing that for like 2.5 years. It was right in my gap year because I took a gap year between high school and college. So it was right in my gap year that happened, which is the absolute perfect timing. I think I got that job and I got into USC in like the same month.
That's cool. How does the pay work? Do you get paid by video or?
Yeah, so I'm an independent contractor who just like I have a contract with them for continued projects, and I get paid per video. But obviously it differs. Like if the video is a highlight reel of their like commentary on one movie, it's a certain amount of money, versus if it's several movies, that's obviously more footage, more to cut down, so that's more. Or like a TV show season, like we have kind of different tiers of payment and structure.
How much is the average, you think, per video?
Yeah, I get paid like $550 for.
That's wonderful.
Like our normal videos are just on a movie, so that's kind of my normal thing, and then it's more for TV shows, but it kind of depends.
That's great. That's such a good gig.
It's fantastic. Yeah, my bosses are great. The YouTube channel's funny. I can make my own hours. It's a really, really good job. I'm really lucky. I just stumbled ass backwards. Yeah.
That's like a top tier job, I would think.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of SCA people or film students, that kind of YouTube editing seems like to be a gig for a lot of people to hone editing skills or just make some extra cash.
Yeah, that's another awesome. Great part. Like for film, it's good to just like I'm editing all the time, like every day. I'm gonna go home from this, and I'm working on a video that's for this week.
Wow.
And so I'm pretty much every day I'm editing, which just helps keep that muscle.
Oh yeah, for
going.
sure. Yeah, so it's good practice.
Yeah.
I didn't know you took a gap year. Hold on.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Yeah.
So you graduated high school in 2021.
Yeah, I graduated high school in 2021, and my whole like back half of the high school experience was completely kind of demolished by COVID.
Right. Yeah.
So I didn't really like my high school experience ended in the middle of my junior year, pretty much, and then I just sort of like stumbled through the next like year or so of finishing out high school. And so then after that, I mean, it was post-COVID, and I don't like school that much, and not that the high school I went to was great, and the people were really supportive, and I'm proud to be from there. But just school as a concept, I've never been a big fan of. And so I decided to take a gap year. I did apply to a couple of places just to see, but my heart was not in it, and I didn't put a lot of work into it. And then, so I decided to take a gap year, and it was the greatest decision I could have absolutely done. Because if you have the ability to take a gap year, because not everybody does, but if you have the ability to take a gap year and have a little bit of experience and go somewhere, like travel a little bit, which I was privileged enough to be able to do, that it's like so much better than rolling right from high school into college, because it turns college into something that isn't just high school part 2, or at least freshman year. I feel like that's what it felt like when I came back. A lot of the people who were coming in, it just sort of felt like they rolled right into another year of high school. So I don't know, for me personally, I thought it was really great. I drove across the US and and traveled around, like backpacked around Europe with my sister, and like,
dude, that's wonderful.
And that was the best part about having that editing job, is I can be making money while I'm doing all of that.
Exactly.
So for like my road trips and for traveling around, because I've done that a lot now, driving around the US, it's great because I can, like, I spent, not this past summer, but the one before, I spent the whole summer doing another like cross the US drive, like all the way around, and it was great. Like I worked the whole time while I was driving and like traveling the country, and then by the time I got home, like I had a little bit more money than I did when I left, because I was just paying off the trip as I was traveling around.
That's so great.
Which isn't like the greatest privilege of having that job, because that's something that I love to do, is road trips and driving and travel.
Back to editing though, and I remember earlier you actually dropped the F word. I do want to hear about the story where you auditioned for Strawman.
No, I was a good little kid. I didn't swear. I don't know. I was very well behaved. My parents weren't very strict about any of that. But I don't know why. I was very, very like, I did not feel good about swearing, saying bad words. Now it's fun. But so even like in auditions and for like roles and stuff, it was really tough. Like I did not want to. And so yeah, for like I was in a couple of short films. I did a lot of student short films back when I was like a much littler. And yeah, there were several curse words and in various like auditions and on set and stuff that I had.
Yeah.
That I had a problem with for sure, yeah.
And you said your dad convinced you.
Yeah, no, I mean that's the thing is that my parents they're not like, they've always been I don't know, they didn't swear around us, but they were never like strict about it really. I mean, with all of the kind of rebellious things people do against their parents, like they were very just sort of like matter of fact about, you'll probably do this and this and that, and and that's fine, just be safe and let us know. Yeah. And because of that, I didn't like, there was no way to rebel against them. I never had a desire to, because they weren't like strict on me, and so I just sort of did it. My rebellion was, I guess, not doing any of that stuff. My unconscious lame awesome. Rebellion.
So that like that definitely shaped who you are today, right? Like, yeah. Because I know you're not like huge into like drinking or partying.
No, I don't drink. I barely go out. Although that's more just because I don't drink, and it's like, it hits 1 a.m. and I'm like, oh my god, I gotta go to bed.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I don't have many vices. I don't drink coffee. I don't do drugs. I don't, But it's not. Again, it's not something that I necessarily... I don't judge other people for doing it. It's just not something I've never wanted for myself. So
right.
Yeah. Who knows? Maybe later.
Maybe later. At the Cannes Film Festival yacht parties,
Yeah. Oh, you know what, Giant? Yeah, when we're at the Cannes Film Festival yacht parties, I will have a sip of wine. All right.
I will as well.
I think that's a good goal. Actually, that's good. It'll keep me... That'll be my motivation, I guess.
And it'll mean something, not just going out.
I cannot drink and everyone... hold me to this. I cannot drink until I win an Oscar.
You applied to USC, right?
Yeah.
So looking back, do you regret?
No, I don't. I'm really hard on the school, cause it's expensive. But I'm pretty hard on the school, and I don't regret it at all. I really. It's what everybody says about film schools. It's important to like meet people, and that's what you get out of it. And that I absolutely have gotten out of it. I'm so happy to be here, and it's also been great just having the college experience. Yeah. I don't think that's something that's necessarily a USC specific thing. I just think going to college has been really good for me, and at USC it's a great place to meet people and to meet people in film, and there are cool opportunities and cool. There are really cool things happening at and around USC. It's specifically the curriculum and some of the higher ups that I have my problems with, that I'm not shy about.
On that note, talk a little bit about your 310 experience, because I do remember I was at the screening where I think Daniel's film was also screening at that point. Was it P1?
Yeah. I
remember after your screening, you had a little spiel about the whole process.
Well, I did do a speech about. Well, it was about a couple of things. It was simultaneously, I think, praising our cohort and also kind of, simultaneously bringing up some of the disappointment in the program. That is not only my own feeling. It's something I've talked to, like, to be honest, most students and also faculty, not like lower level or adjunct faculty, which that's a whole other thing right now.
Right, adjunct faculty. They have their own opinions about things.
Yeah. Sure, because they haven't necessarily been paid their worth. But yeah, so that was, my 310 experience. And 310, I don't know if there are non-USC people here.
There will be a lot,
CTPR 310 is a class that you take in your third year in the USC film production major. And it's a class that is supposed to be kind of like a short film production intensive. Your cohort is split into trios, and you make 3 short films. So you rotate roles. Everybody directs one, produces and edits one, and is a cinematographer on one. The editing job has kind of floated between the producer and the cinematographer. I don't know where it's... I think they might have switched it back.
I think they're switching it back,
But for directing, producing, and cinematography, you'll always be like rotating one per film. So I directed first, and then I did producing, and then I did cinematography. But, you know, it changes depending on when you direct. And yeah, so it's kind of notorious for being a difficult class and like a really stressful class. And that's one thing that I do kind of have a problem with for any incoming film production people at USC. I think there's an attitude about it that I remember on like admitted students day, like orientation, they're telling people that they were bringing students in who were in 310 and having them talk to new, like really? At admitted students day about like, oh my God, it's like so difficult. Like you're going to want to die. I think someone did say that. Like you're going to want to die and it's the worst thing ever. And I don't know. It sets this expectation of it being this massive, difficult, stressful, awful thing. And what it is in actuality is making 3 short films. Now, you have to deal with the sort of inner politics and rules of USC, which changes it from just kind of an indie student film vibe. But it's not, like most of the people coming out of 310, with the exception of people who had like especially difficult times because of whatever extenuating circumstances, most people got out of it and were like, it wasn't as bad as they described. A lot of work, definitely stressful, but it's, I think throughout the years leading up to this one class, you get people just constantly going on about how it's the most difficult thing and you're like how bad it's gonna be for you. And it's kind of like if you're, I don't know, in my head, it's like if you want to teach your kid to ride a bike, and so from ages 1 to age 8, you're telling him all about how it's when you ride a bike, you're going to fall off, you're going to skin your knee, it's going to hurt, and it's going to be scary when it happens. And you're just telling him that for the first 8 years of his life, and then you put him on a bike and go. And what do you expect? He's going to be scared out of his mind, and then he's going to fall and skin his knee and be like, oh my God. Mm-hmm. And then he's going to start telling everybody else that, oh my God, biking is so scary, and you're going to fall, and it's going to be, like, it's not productive, I think, to just be going around setting like an expectation of this horrible thing when it doesn't have to be like that. If we'd gone through our first couple of years and the reputation of 310 as a class wasn't a part of our experience of it, and we just went through with people just saying it's another class, it's a lot of work, another class, but it's fine. If that was what people had been saying up till that point, I think we would have gotten into 310, and people were scared when 310 started, because why wouldn't they be? They've been told it's scary for years. I don't think people would have been scared, and I think by the end of it, they'd have the exact same feeling of like, yeah, no, it's just a lot of work, and, you know, we toughed through it. And so it feels unnecessary, and it feels like, I don't know, you go through something that is a lot of work, and you put a lot of work into it, and so you want it to be this big thing, but...
It seems like it's the status quo for a minute, because 310 has been a class that's been around since... I want to say maybe a decade or 2 decades ago, maybe even longer.
Even longer. George Lucas made it 310.
That's right. So that's been like a thing in the whole USC curriculum. But do you think they're going to do anything to change that, or is that just going to be... Because their argument is, you're going to realize that you're not here to make just your films. You're here to also help others make films. And that's the whole point of, putting you in a trio, and there might be friction when it comes to creativity, but you just have to power through it. That seems to be almost their argument. Do you think is there any room for change?
I think the class is good is the thing. I don't know that I would make any changes to the class part of it, because all the difficulty that comes out of the collaboration part and the being like forced with people who maybe you wouldn't necessarily want to work with,
right,
or even outside of that, just people who you've never worked with before, and that's a challenge.
Right.
I think that's a great thing. I think the class is good. It's just the reputation of the class that even like students and teachers and everybody seems to be like just sort of repeating. That's the thing that I think it just scares people, and I don't know. I think there's an attitude like that about how scary everything is about a lot of filmmaking at the school. And so it's honestly a lot of the stuff I have a problem with. There's some stuff in practice that I do, but it's not really the individual classes that I'm like, that I feel like need to be overhauled as much. I think maybe their positioning in the 4 years of the film production program should be moved around. But in general, it's the culture of it. there's a kind of jaded attitude with not all it's a sweeping generalization because each class will be taught by an individual teacher with their own thoughts, and we've all had great teachers at school, and I have teachers who I really, really love and who have been super supportive and have fostered a good kind of culture. But at the same time, I've gotten the overarching feeling from just the school in general that there's kind of constant doomsday talk about the state of filming in Los Angeles, AI, salaries, streaming services, just jobs, like all of this stuff. Worth talking about, worth bringing up, absolutely. But there's, I don't know. I think that for people who are just coming in and just starting a journey in filmmaking, I don't think it's helpful. Because a lot of people, like fortunately, I guess, knew that I wanted to do this when I was really young, and I've been doing it for a long time, and I've had experience on set, and I've, but there are lots of people who, at the end of high school, were kind of figuring out what they wanted and discovered that they wanted to do film, even sometimes after their senior year was done, or like in senior year. And there's some great talented people as well, but the problem is I think they're being thrown in now with their first experience of filmmaking, being film school, and film school being kind of a culture of negativity. And I don't think that fosters a good attitude towards art.
Right.
So that's my kind of big problem. I think that there's a ton of good stuff about the school. It's just, in general, the culture of it is kind of negative.
So I guess going off of that, what are 3 things you would change about USC's film school's curriculum or program or faculty or whatever? All
right, Dean Daly, I'm speaking to you. So I think like for the first thing is that in our first semester, we didn't do any production classes, which is ridiculous to me. I think that the idea maybe was to ease people into it. Which I think is useless because you're paying a lot of money for a full semester. So like, if you want to get eased into all this stuff, then take a gap year. But it's, I think the first semester I didn't really know anybody. We didn't meet until second semester, and that was the same. Like I didn't meet a lot of people until second semester because there weren't really any social events where they got us together. And there were no classes where it was just us. In your first semester, you take Intro to Cinema and a class called Reality Starts Here. That's more of a mental health class. It's it's basically just about like time management and the history of that I won't bring up here because I don't know exactly how much of that. I don't want to get sued. But there's a reason they have that class, which is, it's good that they have it, but that can coexist with a production class. Yeah. Because in our second semester we take a class called CTPR 285, and that's the first kind of beginner production class that you take, and it was a really great class because it was a lot about creativity, and it was and we had a great teacher as well.
We did.
We had Ben Hansford, who I love.
He's amazing.
He's great. Yeah. And that was a great class because it was all like it was entirely individual projects. So it was like just. The emphasis was on just making stuff, whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether you put a lot of effort into it or no effort into it, just getting something done. And so people made really cool stuff. Like pretty much all of the screenings were a ton of fun because it was everybody just expressing themselves. It was really creative, and I think it was a good artistic class. And it also wasn't a huge workload either. It was pretty low pressure, and so like you could work as hard or as you could just sort of like throw something together and it wouldn't matter. Which I worked super hard on my stuff, and you did too. But it was just a really great low pressure, high creativity class that there's no reason that can't exist in first semester.
Yeah, definitely.
Because then your Intro to Cinema, your Reality Starts Here, and then you have this class where we're all meeting each other because that's where I met everybody. But the problem is you spend like 4 months at the top of the year not meeting anybody and not doing film, which I think was a lousy intro to the school.
Film school, yeah.
And so I think that's like the main thing that I would change. And I would just advance everything. I mean, this is obviously just my opinion because I'm more of a fan of like the intensive stuff.
Right.
Which I think partly was because I took a gap year. Like I took a gap year and I had the fun that I wanted to have. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to pay for film school and let's do this stuff. And I know, like, I don't know where I'm, like, in Vancouver, which I'm from Vancouver Island in Canada, but Vancouver has some great film schools, and the Vancouver Film School has a program that I think it's like a year or 2 years, and it's really intense. And you just get thrown into it with this, like, cohort of people, and you're off to the races immediately, and you just work really, really hard. And so it's this, like, condensed, really fast, really, like, bonding and educational experience, because you're just, like, working harder than you might ever have to work in, you know, the industry with this group of people. And we get there with 310, the class, but that's year 3. Year 3 of 4, we're finally getting intense. I don't know. It feels kind of like we exist in, like, filler episodes on sitcoms for 2 years, and then you know, you wind up finally, like, in an intensive class, which I thought was great, and it was really good, because at the end of 310, the best part is that you get into kind of a flow, again, depending on, assuming that you didn't have any crazy circumstances that made it genuinely horrible beyond what just the stress of normal filmmaking. 310 is great because you get into a flow of just making stuff, because you make one short film, and as you're finishing it, you're working on the next one. And so by the end of it, to be honest, I was feeling like, and I've talked to people who also were feeling like, this is good, I can roll right into P4, frankly, like, into a 4th film, and then a 5th and a 6th. I'm just like, I'm in it now, I understand it. Which I think is perfect, and it's exactly the mindset they should get you in. But then in this semester that we're in now, so this like a 6th semester, they just, like, completely ease off the gas, and so it's not intense, and it's not as crazy. And the semester after that, you get into the thesis films, which is a whole other problem, and then you get into more intense again. But it interrupts the momentum unnecessarily. I think.
You're ambitious, though. I mean,
that's
P4.
True. That's true. I could have kept going. I think I could have kept going all this semester if we just had 310 Part 2.
Yeah.
310
Part 2.
310 Part 2 coming soon.
311.
That's awesome, though. Do you feel like you share similar opinions with a lot of the cohort, or do you feel like you have different kind of perspective on that?
I mean, I can't speak for everybody, obviously. Like, I've talked to a lot of people who feel the same way. I'm definitely more vocal about it than most people are, but I do think that a lot of people feel the same way. Now, I think in terms of, like, I have my solutions that I feel will work for the school or whatever. I'm sure everybody has their own stuff. And yeah, but overall, it's really not, like, the school has, it's all there. It just can be reordered and restructured in a way that's way more, that's tighter and more educational and a little bit more intense, and that I think gets more across to students.
Do you feel like you wanted more, like, technical studies or more, like, theoretical studies? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think technical. I'm a hands-on. This is also, because I did say this earlier, and I should say, I don't like school. Like, I've never, like classes and assignments and homework, it's not something that I've ever enjoyed. So this is also a problem with me, to be clear. This is, like, my own
I
issue.
think a lot of people share that.
I feel like I might have a problem with authority, who knows? But but so that's also something, like, if you really like school, you'll probably, I know there are some people who don't have any problems with the program.
Right.
So it's all subjective. This is my opinion. Yeah.
I would like to hear about, like, your application process, actually. Like, how did you get into USC? What made you choose USC? And, like, you know, was it easy to write those essays? What did you talk about?
I only got into, well, I got into 2 schools. One was USC and one was UT Austin. Go Longhorns. I think that's their thing.
That's their thing.
And I appreciate them. Matthew McConaughey teaches there. It's awesome.
Oh, that's right. He's
I didn't
like
know
an
he teaches
adjunct
there.
professor or something.
Yeah, he fully teaches there.
Yeah.
UT Austin's really, they have a good campus, because I did my USC application on the UT Austin campus.
What? Okay, let's hear about that.
And so, if anybody out there is applying to film schools and you're unsure, UT Austin is a good school. They've got a good campus and a good program. And that's where I probably would have gone if I didn't get into USC. But so I was doing my, I just finished school, and so that was when I did my, like, drive around the country, around the U.S., my first one. And so I basically, I don't know, I worked on a little bit of the USC application. I'd realized that I, like, had to make a short film specifically for it, and I filmed that, I think, the night before I left.
Wow.
And it was just like I just acted in it. It was me in my room. It's a more experimental film than I normally go for, but
which I have never seen. So
you know, you have not. Well, I'll have to show you at some point.
Yes.
But yeah, so it was. But it was cool. It had some cool like colors, and I think it, you know, it worked for what it was supposed to be. And so I filmed that, and then I did not edit it. I just went off on my road trip, and I didn't really. Like I kept trying to work on it, my application, but I was driving around, I was seeing stuff, it was exciting, and I didn't really like get a lot done. I did like the Common App in New York when I was driving through there, but then finally it was like the weekend before the deadline for the application, and I was passing through Texas, and so I got a hotel in like basically right next to the UT Austin campus. And for 2 or 3 days I lived, it was Thanksgiving, I think, American Thanksgiving. I basically just wandered the empty campus of the empty UT Austin campus, and went into just random like libraries and buildings and stuff, and just worked on my applications. And yeah, so it was, I don't know, it was a mad dash. My personal statement is, I think, what got me into the school, and my interview. My personal statement, I basically, like, I don't know, I was sitting there in one of the like kind of library, like a really nice little library area on the campus, and yeah, I don't know, I was just like thinking about, I'd been doing I'd watched a lot of videos about like college admissions. And about like that process, and it was just starting to piss me off, like just the way that they let people in and don't, what they choose to value and what they don't. And I was just thinking all about, like, I don't know, what people do in high school and what they give up for a better look on their application, and how sometimes that doesn't even matter. I was just getting myself riled up, and I was just pissed. And which, so again, take everything I'm saying on this whole podcast with that in mind. But yeah, so I just decided, like, USC has a really low acceptance rate. It's almost like a lottery ticket school to apply to. And so I just thought, like, I'm going to just have fun with the application. So I wrote a, like, very kind of, like, meta, weird, like, 1,000-word personal statement that, like, it changed fonts. It changed into at one point, it switched into a screenplay format. And there was, like, a weird script about, like, I forget exactly what it was. There was, like, I started writing a script about, like, me on, like, the Jimmy Fallon show, and he's, like, introducing me, so that's how I got into got my little, like, resume items into the personal statement, as he was introducing me with them. But then fake Jimmy Fallon, my essay, started freaking out because he was a figment of the reader's imagination, and the moment you stop reading and stop thinking about him, since he's an imaginary character on a page, he'll stop existing, and he's afraid of not existing anymore. And then we just cut back out to, like, I just sort of went back to my normal essay. Then I added, like, little pictures of words instead of the words, and I changed fonts and font sizes, and I just went crazy on it.
So I gotta see that.
Yeah, I can send it to you. So I just like, I tried to have the most fun I could with the personal statement, and I just wrote something that was like slightly insane but very me, and was like I really liked, like, I enjoyed reading and I had a lot of fun with.
Wow.
And so, because I didn't like school, I didn't like school, but I did get, like, I got fine grades. I got kind of like a B+ average my entire life, even through college. Like, B+ is my kind of zone where I live. So it wasn't like, I don't know, my grades weren't necessarily, like, helping me, but they weren't, like, dragging me down. Because I know, like, people, because I'm sure some people who might watch this might be applying to schools. And so, yeah, I applied test optional. I didn't do the SAT or whatever
That's
you have to do.
ACT, yeah.
ACT, okay. Didn't do any of that. And we didn't have AP classes at my high school, so I didn't do any of those. But I did do an IB English class, and that was my one little higher level class. And then, yeah, I got, like, B+, A-. And so, yeah, then the rest of the application, I don't even really remember that much, but I submitted that, and then I got an email once I was back home for my trip. Because I submitted that, and I kind of forgot about it, I was just like, well, it'll happen or it won't.
Yeah.
And so then I got an email from a professor at USC, who is not here anymore, unfortunately. But I got an email that was like, oh, like I saw your application and I'd like to ask you a few questions about it and like have an interview with you.
That's awesome.
And I don't. Did you guys do interviews for USC?
Yeah.
Okay, because like from what I heard, from what I've like looked up, they're supposed to last like 20 minutes ish, like 20 minutes to half an hour, and my experience, like I got on a call with this guy and I was like nervous. I was really scared. I set up like a sheet by my window to like be diffusion from the sun. So like,
that's great. Yeah.
And so I got on this call and he and I just got along really, really well. And the interview ended up lasting over an hour. Like it was just because it was us like talking. And shooting the shit for like a lot of it. Because he asked me about what I'd done, and then I talked to him a little bit about the school. I think at some point I made the college admission scandal joke, which I just made like off the dome because I've been thinking about it because I've been applying to the school. And I was like, oh, I shouldn't have said that. But then he liked it and he like went along with it. Wow. So it just like he and I clicked really well. Which that's the other thing about applying to USC and getting in. Because there's not really a doubt in my mind that he's the reason I got in. Like he fought for me after that.
Yeah.
Because he was interested in that personal statement. That's what kind of caught him.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing is it's like you can be totally suited for it and just you get a bad interviewee or the people reading your application are not like into it. Because that's the other thing is that he emailed me and said that he needed, like, it was a last minute interview because he's like, I don't know how like I missed this, but like I was doing my second round of reading the applications and like I found yours. So I don't even know what the hell that means, but like it clearly, like, you know, other people read them and someone else I think read my application just like didn't really care for it. It was that specific guy read mine, connected with what I did in the application, interviewed me, and he and I had a good like conversation. So like there is a lot you can do to set yourself up for success when you're applying.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you don't get in, it's just like, frankly, there's a part of luck to all of this that is, I think, important to not like be crushed by a rejection from USC. Because that's the thing, I got rejected from all the other schools because I didn't do a crazy personal statement like that for the rest of them. Because the USC's was the most open. All the others had really specific like font, whatever, like really specific rules, and USC was just write 1,000 words. But I got rejected from LMU, or I think I got like waitlisted everywhere. I got rejected UCLA, I got waitlisted like NYU, LMU, Chapman, wherever. I only got into USC. And again, that there's an element of luck to that and timing. And I got rejected from USC the first, like when I didn't really care about the application that much, but I did apply to like a couple of places. USC was one of them, and I got rejected that first year, and then I applied again and I got accepted.
But you didn't take the gap year because of that rejection?
No, not really. I was kind of planning, even if I got in, to try to like defer or like do it.
Oh, gotcha.
The gap year was always kind of a part of that plan. But
that's awesome.
But yeah, no, so it's like it's definitely a nice little ego boost to get into a school as exclusive as this and with such a reputation.
Right.
But it's also not getting in, I think, you know, I would hate to see someone be like crushed and think that there's something like wrong with them or whatever, like that they can't achieve what they want because they didn't get into USC, because so much of this is luck.
Absolutely.
And so yeah, if you didn't get in, fine.
Yeah.
Did you only apply to film schools or also other programs that are like outside of the film world?
I only applied to film schools because again I don't like school, so I was like if I'm gonna go to film school, I'm gonna go to like a good film school, right. And I'm gonna go to film school.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. I also, while that whole application process was happening, USC was one of the last schools that I heard from. I think it might have been the last school that I got a decision from. And so, like, I basically through that spring was just getting waitlisted or rejected from everywhere. Like, I remember as that was happening, I was just getting kind of like waitlisted and rejected. And, you know, there were some schools that, you know, reputationally nowhere near USC. And so I was like, oh, I'm not gonna fucking get into USC then. And so I'd kind of written that off. And I started to kind of create this own world of like, you know what, I don't need film school, like screw this. Here's what I'm gonna do when I don't get, like, I'm not gonna get in, and that's fine. And I'm gonna go to LA and whatever, and I'm gonna like make my own path, and this is fine. And I just like over the weeks came up with this like world that I was gonna live in with this plan for the future, and I was feeling great about it. I was like, I'm gonna go the indie film route. This is gonna be fantastic. So I'd worked on like a bunch of like some indie features and lots of short films and stuff. I was like, this is, you know what, this is good. I don't need school. I like this plan. I like fell in love with this imaginary future for myself.
Yeah.
And then I got into USC, and the day that whole day was really exciting, and I was stoked and super excited. And then the day after I got into USC, I was like really sad. And it wasn't because I was sad about getting to USC, but it was just like, oh no, I'm definitely gonna go here. This is like a great opportunity, and I'd be an idiot not to. But I was kind of mourning this whole other plan that I had for myself in this like world that I'd like carved out.
What was that plan?
It was really loose.
Okay, I would love to hear it.
I mean, it was
for
really
anyone
just
that
like,
didn't get into USC and wanted to follow Octavian's indie film plan.
no, I mean it's just like there are a lot of ways everywhere, not just Los Angeles. Los Angeles is obviously Hollywood land, so it's a good place to go for film, especially if you want to do studio film work. But there are lots of ways to meet people and get on sets. I mean, everybody who's making films needs people, especially like in indie film. So my plan, I was gonna go down and like go to like Santa Monica Community College or like City College or whatever, and so yeah, I was gonna like do like a community college thing, just like meet some people through that, and then just go through like independent film societies and like meet people through. Like Film Independent, Secret Movie Club. There are others that I'm completely
all the festivals too, right?
Yeah, and the festival circuit, which I've been on a couple of times and I've been on since, which I love, and I meet people every time I go through film festivals. I've met some really close, good friends at film festivals who are like the coolest people ever, and so that was my plan. I was going to do film festivals. I was just going to make my own stuff, and I was going to meet people through these like film societies. Because that's what I'd done back home as well, is through a film society in Victoria called Cinevic. That is a great, if anyone's on Vancouver Island, British Columbia, Canada, it's this fantastic like independent filmmaking society that doubles as kind of a rental house for equipment, that really good rates for members on various equipment, and also workshops for filmmaking and also networking opportunities. And it's I was on the board of directors for a couple of years of it, and so I was going to basically do that in Los Angeles. Still not a bad plan. Still, it would have been great. And it's probably, honestly, post-grad will do a lot of that.
Well, what is the plan post-grad?
I'm going to be homeless.
Uh-huh.
That is my plan, actually. I'm going to live in a van, because I love driving. I love driving around. I should say houseless, I guess.
Yeah.
I'm going to drive around the U.S., drive around Canada, travel a little bit, because hopefully I'll still have like this great job that I have right now, and I can do that, and maybe pick up some more editing work. Yeah, immediately post-grad, that's my plan so far, because I don't think it's necessary to rush a film career. I think that can really kill your love for it. It's just my opinion, but I don't know. We're not athletes. Like, it's not something where, you hit age 29 and all of a sudden it's like, you just can't do this anymore. People are directing movies at age like 90. Clint Eastwood's directing movies still.
He's what, 89, 90?
Yeah. And it's like, I'm in this for the long haul, obviously. And so I don't know. I don't need to be some super success at age 23. It's not like a priority for me, because in general, what I've been told by every single, like, we're adults, but every single adult in my life, every single like person basically, is to have fun now, do stuff now, like live, but and go crazy and travel and do stuff before you have responsibilities, and you start to build a career, and that is more responsibility, and if you want to have a family, that's more responsibility.
Yeah.
And those are beautiful, wonderful things that I want to do, but at the same time, I want to be able to live in my van and just drive around and do whatever, and it's like, I want to go somewhere, I can just go.
Yeah.
So that's just for like a year or so. That's my plan right now. I'm trying to emphasize life experience. I used to care a lot more about career when I was in like high school, and And you know, I just the longer I'm alive, the more I just want to be an artist.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And you have a van already, right?
I have a little minivan that I've done all my driving in. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna be saving up over the next like year and a half ish.
RV, maybe.
Yeah, like, not quite an RV, but I definitely want like. I mean, the ideal is a Sprinter van, but those are expensive.
I love
so,
those things. Looks so nice.
Yeah, no. So I definitely, my dad and I build lots of stuff together, and I want to build out a van.
You know, if you didn't go to USC for a year, you get a Sprinter van.
Yeah, keep that in mind as well. Actually, how expensive this place is. Yeah, But yeah, no. So that will be very fun.
You know, from what I've heard you speak, like you have a lot of experience like making films like already. You know, coming in from like age 8 until now. You know, you've been making films for what, like almost 15 years, right? Is that crazy?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I guess I will say like I got serious about it, and like with making short films and not just sort of filming around, like dicking around with a camera. I really started making stuff when I was like, when I was like 13, like 12, 13.
Yeah.
That was when I really like, I had a YouTube channel, and as we all do.
Yeah.
And and yeah, so I would do like daily. I would do like 2 videos a day for like months at one point, like comedy sketches, and I was on that grind. They were terrible, but it was like a great, that's when I really started making a lot of stuff. And then after that, I was like, I want to make short films, and I started getting serious about that. So it hasn't quite been that long, but I've known that I wanted to make film. I just didn't quite understand what that meant until a little bit later.
I was wondering though, in what ways has acting informed your filmmaking? Because you're in The Flash and you're on sets a lot as talent. Mm-hmm. That's kind of the other side of filmmaking, is working with actors and being behind a camera versus in front of a camera. So I was wondering how that affected your sensibilities or the way you work. Yeah, no,
I love acting. It's a lot of fun, and I think it definitely helps. I don't know. I know what I like and don't like from a director when I'm acting, which helps a lot. Like that's, I think, why it's so good to act a little bit if you're directing, is so that you can have the experience of like, I don't know, some director telling you something, being like, I don't need that right now. I get it.
What's like one example?
Well, it's just when people get a little bit too like, I don't know. As a director, I guess there's kind of an instinct to over-explain sometimes that I've fallen into that trap all the time.
Same here.
Yeah, but it's and so that's one thing when you're acting. It's like, no, I've done the work. I know. Or like you kind of screw up a take and that you screwed it up, and you're like, okay, wait, just let me do another one. And then a director comes in and starts talking about like, hey, so let's do it. It's like, no, I know. No, it's like the worst thing ever. So I think that's like for me. But I also, as an actor, I like to get notes. I like to give options, and
yes,
I don't know. It makes me uncomfortable when I do like one take and then the director's like, yeah, good. It's like, well, hey, whoa, I'm not that good. Like, let's calm down. So that's definitely a couple of things. But just in general, it's nice to know what it feels like, and yeah.
Would you want to direct a feature anytime soon?
I don't know. I've been writing features recently, which is really nice. I've been doing a lot of writing recently. I love to write, and so maybe it just the right story would have to come along. I really do love kind of like indie films. I wish I watched more of them. But I really enjoy. Yeah, like movies that have a little bit of a budget, but are more in like the $200,000-$300,000 budget range. I watched Shiva Baby recently.
Oh, I love that.
Which is a great movie.
Yeah.
Emma Seligman is great. Canadian director. This is really awesome.
There's a lot of good Canadian directors.
There are. Megan Park is another like fantastic
My Old
new.
Ass, right?
And The Fallout, also Canadian. Yeah, there are some good Canadian filmmakers.
Denis Villeneuve.
All right. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh my
absolutely.
God. Yeah, he's one of our
He's
best.
the guy.
Yeah. No, Canada's taking
There's
over.
a lot of creative people.
Just
Yeah.
really
A lot
good.
of production is actually happening in places in Canada, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, Toronto is a big place to film, and Vancouver is a huge place to film. I mean, all of those like DC shows, a lot of TV. Honestly, for the past like 40 years, Vancouver's been a big place to film in. Because why wouldn't you want to film there? I mean, it's it's a pretty friendly place. Vancouver gets a little bit, but it's a great city, and it's got great crews and great facilities. And if you go there, I mean, the currency right now, I won't get political, but the currency is it's bad for Canadians right now, like coming into the U.S. But if you take an American film budget over to Canada, like you end up with, I think it's $1.40 Canadian for every dollar US. So like if you take $1 million budget from America into Canada, you're talking about like $1,400,000.
$1,400,000. Wow, yeah.
Yeah, and there's tax credits. So like it's a
right,
great.
It just makes sense.
It really does,
there
and it's a beautiful looking place. And it also Vancouver doubles as anything. Anytime you see Seattle in a movie, it's Vancouver. It looks like a city. It can be Chicago, not quite New York, but it can be kind of any metropolitan area. Vancouver's fantastic.
Yeah.
And yeah, so a lot of films in Canada. I definitely I didn't go to school in Canada and in Vancouver, not because it wasn't like a great place to be for film. It's just I didn't want to go so close to home, and just I know that already, and I kind of wanted to come down here.
I mean, you got that adventurous gene in you, you know.
yeah, no, that's from my parents for sure. But
I did want to ask you about back to the IMDb stuff.
Yeah.
In there it says the police showed up during the filming of Attack of the Scarecrow.
Yeah, we had a C-stand. We needed to get a light from Moonlight up, and it was like one of those big aperture lights, like a big sort of older aperture light, and we needed to get it up as high in the sky as possible, and so we set it up on a C-stand fully extended, which is bad. But that wasn't the worst of it. Fully extended, then we took the C-stand, put it on top of my car, like on the roof of my car, and just kind of strapped it in.
Oh my god, yeah. And
that wasn't for the whole shoot. That was for a specific shot. But it wasn't dangerous in the sense that there was nobody in the vicinity to get crushed if it fell. But it was certainly dangerous for the equipment. We were safe about it, but so people did show up and ask about it. But I don't know. There's a better attitude about that back home. Because I'm not from Vancouver. I was born there, but I live on Vancouver Island, which is a much more rural area, and not a lot of stuff films there. All the Hallmark stuff films there. If you see a Hallmark Christmas movie, it was shot in Victoria, basically, or the surrounding area. But not a ton of stuff is filming Vancouver Island, and so it's really great for indie film and for my purposes and all that, because people are just curious. Nobody's jaded from it. You know, if you go into if we went to like a restaurant and needed a restaurant for a short film, and so you just knock doors and you're like, hey, we're filming a short film, and it helps them young. It's like a student thing, right. And everyone's really the attitude in general is really good. It's like, oh my god, you're making a movie? That's so cool. And and it's so it's been really great. I mean, Attack of the Killer Scarecrow is a Halloween short film. That is exactly what it sounds like, and it takes place in a corn maze, and we literally we just showed up. I emailed back and forth with a guy whose family owns a corn maze that goes up every year. Well, I didn't know him at all. I'd never even been to the corn maze or anything, and it's the Saanich corn maze. If it's October and you're in Saanich, and it's this just wonderful family. And it was I asked hey, can we film for 2 weekends, basically in your backyard at your corn maze? And he was just like, oh my god, yeah, that sounds amazing. Can we help? Do you need food? We can bring you. So let's run power. How's it going? They were the sweetest, nicest people ever. And it's really, there's a great community feeling to where I'm from that I really, really love. And that I appreciate even more now that I'm here in a big city. Yeah. It's not like LA. It's not even really in LA. It's a city thing, kind of. But
is it a little different here than back home?
Yeah. Well, nobody. I mean, LA is weird. Nobody responds to your emails. Nobody calls you back. Everyone is really cynical. The cynicism I have a problem with, like what I talked about with the school. That's a personal thing for me. I don't know. I don't love it when it comes to just filmmaking as a concept, as an idea, and as something that you do for your life. I don't like cynicism around it at all, because what's the point? If we're going to be cynical about being artists and about being filmmakers, let's wrap it up and go home. Like, why are you doing this, you know?
Exactly.
Not to say that there aren't moments of cynicism or, well, you know, everybody's human. Like, I get pissed and sad and scared and all that, and I can fall into that for all of this, but just in general, I don't know. I would rather be optimistic about it. But then again, I don't think about it as much as a career as I used to.
I mean, I love that. You know, I think optimism is always the way to go. With like when approaching life, you know, things go wrong all the time, but when you approach it with a more positive mindset, things tend to turn around better. And you know, I do want to talk a little bit about your film Wormies, because that's the big, you know,
that's
monster
my recent
movie.
like big one. Yeah,
I want to hear your story on how you came up with the idea and how you made it and the aftermath of it.
Yeah, so Wormies is a 20 minute long, 19-minute, 55-second long for festivals. It's under 20 minutes, so it can get in
That's
there.
right.
But it's a 20-minute long like 80s set monster adventure short film. It's kind of inspired by Spielberg stuff, by like Gremlins and Poltergeist and a little bit of Jurassic Park and Gremlins 2, weirdly. And yeah, so it's it was this big project that I wrote it in when I was like 15 years old, because I was having like a writer's block sort of month, and my mom told me, she was like, just write, like if we could make anything you wanted to make and it didn't like budget didn't matter and practicality didn't matter, what would you want to make right now? Just write that. And so then I wrote kind of the first draft of this short film.
Wow.
And so like we couldn't make it at that point. But then I made Attack of the Killer Scarecrow, and that was a really that was an 11-minute short film, which was way longer. I'd done like 4 or 5 minute stuff, and that was pretty much it. And so that was like a big step up for me, because it was a bigger shoot, bigger crew. It was, and I'm still proud of that short film. It's a fun watch around Halloween time. I like it. But it kind of proved to me, like, it was a longer shoot, longer movie, bigger, like everything. And I finished that movie, and it went pretty well, and I'm never happy with anything. I finished it, and I thought it sucked. But we got through the experience, and I was, like, kind of proud of what we'd done. And I was like, you know what? I feel like I can make this now, this script that I'd had. And so, I think, I was, like, 16 then. And that's when I started, like, really seriously working on it. And so then I was planning, like, okay, we're going to do all this stuff, and then we're going to film it in March of 2020. And that didn't work out for obvious reasons. Like, we were really on our way, and then...
the worst time.
And then, everything shut down. And so it was just kind of sitting there. But the problem was I was really stuck on it. I got really into... Like, we were in pre-production. We'd started building this mechanical worm creature. I can send you stuff that you can maybe cut in with this for what we've been building.
Definitely.
And so we were, like, fully working on it. I'd been, like, revising the script a bunch. We were, like, looking for props and, like, locations. And so by the time COVID hit, I was stuck on that. I could not... Like, I was trying to get my mind off of it. And, like, do another short film that I can do during COVID, or, like, do other stuff. And I could not. And so finally, in February of 2021, we filmed it starting Valentine's Day, starting February 14th, and going through, I think when all is said and done, and this isn't something that anyone should ever do for a short film, but I think we had 17 shooting days.
Oh my god.
Which is stupid. God, there's a bug. Oh, I think I got it.
You did get it.
Damn. Jesus. But yeah, so we shot way too long. We had like a full 2 weeks of production, just like back to back, just constant filming. Like we would take a day off every like 4 days of shooting, but we'd be right back at it. So it was like 2 full weeks, and then a couple of days outside of that, which not practical for any reason, and not it shouldn't be necessary for any kind of short film. I could make that short way quicker now, but it was a great experience for like in the future making a feature film or something like that.
Definitely.
Because the stamina of that kind of shoot is something that like even like 310 doesn't even compare to it. Right. Like having to keep going after like 10 consecutive days of filming was so much, especially on like a student, like, well, it wasn't even a student film. I worked with a lot of adults on that. We had a lot of great people who like volunteered, and it was a community effort for the Victoria filmmaking community, which was really, really nice. And but yeah, by day like 4, we'd been filming a ton, and I watched the footage on the day off, and I was not feeling good about it, and I was like, this is not what the movie that I wanted to make. Things like it's unnecessary to get into specifics really, but it was just like things aren't working out in general for what I wanted. But you can't stop, you know, it's all just a moving thing. And so I like, honestly, for that shoot, a lot of the days like things just didn't go the way like to plan. I was having trouble like communicating exactly what I wanted, and we'd film a 12-hour day, and then I would like go home, cry my eyes out, then be like, okay, back into it, and then the next day would just like do it all over again. But it was good. I never broke on set, or even like I once I was in the car driving home, that's when which I think was a good thing. But I was devastated because it's this thing that I've been working on for years at that point. It felt kind of like a first feature filmmaking experience just because of how long it took to make it, and even the shooting schedule felt so long. So it was initially going to just be like a big short film project that probably would have taken a year. But then by that point it had been maybe like 2 years of working on like this one film, and I'm finally filming it, and it's not what I want it to be, and it was devastating. And so we got to the end of the production. The cast and crew were so wonderful, and everybody like volunteered their time, and that was something I really felt good about, just the people on it. But we got to the end of it, and I looked at the footage, and I just hated it. Like I went through the dailies. I tried to cut it together, and then for the next basically like a year and a half ish, I would spend a week working really hard on it, trying to edit it, and then I would get so depressed from looking at the footage and feeling like such a failure that I would just stop. And I couldn't look at it anymore because it made me so genuinely depressed. And then I would just leave it for months. And then I'd come back to it because it would start stressing me out. Like, I still haven't finished this. And I would go back to it, and I'd start working on it. And I would just be like, this sucks. And that just kept going until I was at USC, until the very end of my first semester. I woke up literally in a cold sweat from stress having not finished it. Like, I woke up and I was like, oh shit, I like need to finish this movie. It's still like here, it's still in my head, and it's like screwing with me. And so so that's when I just really like powered through it and just worked really hard to get it done over sort of the next few months after that. And by that point, I kind of completed the full cycle of grief you do on a film when you hate it. And it got to the point where I'd filmed it so long ago that I had just enough distance to like be like, okay, this is fine. Like, I'm just gonna like finish it and do the best I can with it and really try to make it good. And then it started to really help when the finishing touches started to get added onto it. Like when I started working with the composer of that film, Jared Richardson, who he's from like home. He's from Canada, and he's excellent. And so the score of that short film, like what I wanted was this Jerry Goldsmith type of sound, and he got it immediately. And once I started getting music cues back, that's when I started to get like excited about it again. It was like this really great feeling of like, wait, this like feels right. This feels really good. Yeah. And so that I kind of started feeling a little bit better about it. I was like, okay, you know what, this is fine. I'm gonna get it finished, and it'll be done finally. I can send it to the cast and crew, those poor people who've been waiting for years to see it. And yeah, so I got it done. I think it might have been like March 31st, because I got it done for like a film festival deadline. And so I think it was March 31st or April 1st, one of those, that I submitted it to festivals. Which felt great. It was a big relief, a big weight off my shoulders. And then after that, it had a pretty good life at film festivals, and I got to kind of slightly tour around the U.S. a little bit with it. Like, went to Chicago, and it went to like Portland, and like a couple places in California, and yeah, it was a great it was really fun the last half of 2021 or 2020. Wait, what year is it? 2022 maybe. Yeah, my second semester here at USC, I was like bringing that around to film festivals a lot. Like, yeah, I went to Orlando, and there's like a lot of fun film festivals and people I got to meet and places I got to go. And people generally, like, it works for a horror film audience because it's a very like kind of classic 80s monster movie type of feeling. And interestingly enough, I think a lot of the ways that I failed on it were maybe failings that are kind of common in that type of movie. And so it almost worked as like it was cheesier than I wanted it to be, but as a cheesy 80s movie, it works. And so now I'm able to like kind of look back at it and be, you know, there's so much different that I wanted it to be, but I can look back at it and be like proud of what it is, and definitely proud of making it. I mean, the experience of making it, frankly, was film school for me. Like, that was my film school. And this is my industry school. Yeah. And that was my like film school for directing. So it was a really great experience, but it was also deeply, deeply sad and scary and exciting and happy and horrible.
After this experience and like so many other filmmaking experiences, what would be one piece of advice you would give your high school or freshman year self?
Oh man, I guess, you know, it's tough because like all of the lessons that I learned on it kind of needed to be learned through doing it and through screwing up practically. I would say don't film for 14 days in a row. That would be like, you don't need to do that. But then again, even that was a total screw up and I'd never do it again for a short film. But it was, now I've had that experience of directing for that long, that in such a stressful environment. So that was also a good thing, I guess. Advice in general, it's the most boring advice ever, but it's just like keep making stuff. Yeah. Which I frankly have a tough time with even now. So it's less of advice for my past self and more of advice for me right this second. Because I think I get really precious about stuff. And I don't know, there's this like, I guess there's like an ego about it and this feeling of, I don't want my reputation to suffer from having made something bad. And so when I make something, it has to be better than the last thing I did, and it has to be great. Yeah. And it doesn't. And I know that, but there's still like this feeling of, you know, needing to always be like fantastic and to the stuff you make to be important and to be impressive. And so you can only ever make something with that mindset where you put a ton of hours and work and whatever and spend half a year on. And sometimes it's good to just do a 48-hour film festival, or to get like a reel of Super 8 film and just sort of shoot it and make a cute little short on that, or to, you know, to just do an exercise. Yeah. And that's something that film school is good for. And that's a great part of this whole thing. There are certain classes, like the 285, 290 is a class, and then 310, although 310 is more of a practical class and less of like a you making stuff just for making stuff. Yeah. But 285 and 290 are two classes that I loved, and I think they're really great.
I agree. And you have some great stuff from there. Like, you really put a lot of effort into
I put a lot of effort into my 290 stuff specifically. You know what, that was one where like I just kept getting more and more ambitious with it after every project, and that was one where I did really have the mindset of my next one has to be like way cooler than the last one, and that honestly kind of worked in my favor in that class. But yeah, I worked really hard on 290 stuff. But you have to. I mean, if you're at film school and you're just like slacking off on the films, I don't know. Like, what's the point of that? What are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. I love that. And you speak a lot about your love for writing, actually. What is your process of like just being consistent with writing, and you know how to get a feature out? Because not many people have, at our level, been able to write whole feature films, right?
Yeah, I definitely, because a good distinction is that I've not written good feature films. But I have completed drafts of scripts, which is what I've been working on right now. I would never claim to like, I don't know, be an expert on writing in the storytelling sense. I'm definitely like getting better, and I write a lot, and so you know, I feel like I am getting better at it, but we're all still kind of in that learning stage right now. And so for getting it done, because that was the thing that I was having a problem with and was trying to like overcome. I think the way that I did it is by doing 3 pages a day, minimum 3 pages a day. Sometimes I would do more. But the first feature film that I wrote, that I'm right now rewriting, because you know what, I do think that one's good. I take it back. That one is one that I really, really love the story for it, and so I like had the idea, and I knew that I wanted to make it, and so I knew that it would be a good feature script to start with for my first one, because it is like kind of structured. I'm sure all of us have ideas. You know, you learn about story structure, and you're like, screw this, I'm gonna like do something crazy and abstract. Right. And actually, the protagonist is the antagonist, and we learn 3/4 of the way through the film, and then the protagonist changes to this other character. It's like, you know, yeah. And those are great. But for my first feature, I knew that I wanted a story that would like fit kind of into story structure, so I wouldn't be like trying to reinvent the wheel before I could like make the wheel.
Yeah. Right.
And so it was a story that I loved, and it also generally, not completely, but it kind of generally worked for a beginning, middle, end, and it had a protagonist all the way through. And so I started by outlining. I spent like a month just figuring out. My outline wasn't really it's not a beat sheet, which I'll talk about a little bit later, because that doesn't work for me. But it could work for you. It's my version of it was just this kind of like, I would draw out a line, and then I would put sort of like spokes on the line, and I would just draw like, okay, this happens here. And I mean, I'm sure like people's coming up with ideas is like different for everybody, but I think in general, you know, you have an idea that you like, or maybe you come up like, oh, this would be a really cool shot or a cool character, and then you I don't know, whenever I've been inspired like that, it's been followed by like a 2-week period of just I'm going grocery shopping, I'm like, oh, and then there could be a scene where this happens, then blah blah blah. And I had some of those written down, so I just started, and this is a great thing to do off the bat, I think, because it just makes you feel good. I started out by just like taking all those scene ideas, and I looked at my line kind of like I'm a detective with one of those like sort of clue boards, and I was just like, okay, this scene probably belongs around here, and then this one belongs around here, and then whatever. And so then I like knew how I wanted to end it, so I was like, okay, the ending's here, and I knew what my midpoint was, so I was like, okay, that's there. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, this is, you know, I know where I'm kind of at. So then I spent a few weeks just sort of plotting out, like, mostly character arcs. The plot isn't something that I wanted to plot out. But the character, I wanted to know exactly like where they went and the change they went through and why, you know, I did a lot of character work basically. And as I was doing that, you come up with more ideas for scenes, because you're like, okay, this character is this way, and so wait, that would be an interesting thing, blah blah blah. And so that whole time I am adding some more cards, and eventually I ended up with, like, I knew exactly what my character arc was going to be, and I had a healthy number of scenes. Basically every like 10 or so pages, I kind of knew my checkpoints almost. I didn't have any of the fill in the blanks. Like, I know he ends up here, and that in the middle, like before that, he's here. I don't know what happens in there. But then I just started writing. Yeah. Because I think, and again, this is different for everybody. For me, I think when I'm outlining stuff, I'm thinking through it, which can be necessary for like the logic of a story. But when you're just writing, I'm like feeling it. Yeah. And so I thought through as much as I needed to before writing, but not like a thing more, so that when I started writing, there was a sense of freedom of like anything could happen in the script. I know where it's going, and I know some things I want to happen. But so I started writing it, and it was 3 pages a day. And the important thing for me, because I know myself, and I know that like if I were to fall off for a day, I would stop. And so like if I gave myself like, oh, I'll just do like a cheat day, a break day, I would probably just never get back to it. And so I didn't let myself miss a single day. Even it was basically before I go to bed, I have to have written 3 pages. So a lot of the time I was writing like in bed. It was like, oh my God, I want to go to bed so bad. I've had like a busy day, but I can't go to sleep until I finish this. Yeah. And so I started writing it 3 pages at a time. And then I went on my second road trip across the U.S. And so I was writing the film while I was driving around. So that was the other thing, too, is a lot of the time I would be writing it in a Walmart parking lot in an air mattress in the back of my minivan. Wow. And I'd be like, okay, I've finally set up for bed. It's 2 a.m. I need to go to bed, but I have to write my pages.
Yeah.
And so it was a really exciting thing because as I was writing, I was not holding myself to it being good. I was like, this is going to be a bad script, so screw it. I'm not even going to think about quality. I was just trying to have the most fun I could possibly have while writing. And so while it would be like, okay, I introduced a character and I put them in like a tricky situation, and then I've hit like 4 pages or whatever, I'm going to go to bed. I'm like, man, what are they going to do? I don't even know. How are they going to get out of this one? And I just go to bed and I would wake up, and, as I was driving and as I was doing stuff, I would just be thinking all day about like, man, like what's going to happen next? Like, who is this person I just introduced? I don't even know. And sometimes I'd come up with ideas throughout the day. Sometimes I wouldn't. I'd just sit down and be like, what's the most fun I could have right now in this moment with this character or with this situation? And I just followed that. Like, I just went as fun as I could. And so what happened is I basically spent 2 months having the time of my life writing this thing. Basically every day, it was like I was watching like a serial or something, and it ends on a cliffhanger or something. I was like, oh my god, what are they gonna do? And then there's of course the thing of like, as I have a scene that I really want for the middle, and as I was getting closer to it, I was like, oh my god, this is so exciting! It's gonna happen soon. And so I kind of wrote my script as if I was just experiencing it as an audience. And it was the best writing experience of my life because it was just fun. I wasn't thinking about it being good. I wasn't thinking about like it getting produced. I wasn't thinking about anything. It was just purely story and like what I was enjoying. And so because of that, I got really into the characters and I got like really into the story, almost like as an audience member, equally to as a writer. And so then by the end, like there was a character that I like killed off at the end, and I've never experienced it. It's so pretentious to say, but it's true. I was like really sad. Like I started tearing up as I was writing the character dying, which had never happened before. But it's because I was just like I felt like I'd just been spending the last month with this character, having a fun time and like doing fun stuff with them, and then now they're dying. It felt like an audience's perspective on a character death, and not just like a writer's plotting it. Yeah. And so, I wrote that all the way to the end, and I mean, I remember the very last day, I was just so excited about like, because my ending, I'd known the whole time, and I was like, finally we're here, and it's this big set piece, and I was really excited about it. And so I got to the end, and I wrote like 20 pages in that, like in a few hours. Like I was just so excited about it, and I knew what I wanted, and I like, and it was, and I finished it, and it was like 122 pages of a screenplay, and then I put it away and I did not look at it for like a year. Because it was just like that's the thing, I made it like not about writing necessarily. It was just about like me having a good time and like telling a story to myself, basically.
I love what you said about like just incorporating the funness into it, because if you're not having fun, you're not gonna hit 122 pages. You might, and it would take way longer, and you're like, you won't get as much out of it. So I love using the funness to like drive your writing process, and that's great.
I mean, if you're not having fun with your own story, then like what is the audience going to get out of it? I don't know.
Exactly.
And not all movies are supposed to be fun necessarily, but whatever you're trying to get across, like if you're not feeling it,
you gotta be invested for sure.
But at the same time, I think, and this is another a slight dig at USC, sorry again, but I think there's an attitude, and this isn't a purely USC problem. This is kind of a screenwriting guru problem or teaching problem. When you take a screenwriting class, or even like watch screenwriters or screenwriting teachers on videos, in general, there's an attitude about like, here's how you write, here's what you do. And there's really specific stuff about, the structure is super specific, or this has to happen on page 12, and this, you start by outlining, and you do a general outline, you do a skeleton outline, and then you go in scene by scene, you do that, and then you do this, and then you do that. And there's a great video that's I'll send it to you. It's a compilation of interviews with some of the most famous screenwriters working today. A lot of them are directors, but it's like Quentin Tarantino, Alex Garland, Greta Gerwig, Rian Johnson, whatever, like big writers who are working right now. And all of them are talking about how they outline. And the thing that will strike you when you watch it is that every single one of them has a completely different process. Like genuinely, like whatever, Quentin Tarantino outlines to the middle than he doesn't anymore. Ryan Johnson needs to know exactly what happens. I think Alex Garland has just like beats and then he fills in the blank. Like everyone's totally different because there's no way to write.
Right.
And so in general, because yeah, that's something that a problem I've had with USC and like our screenwriting classes. But it's also, to be fair to them, it's just a problem in general with people who claim to know how to be a screenwriter.
Yeah.
So I think the big thing that I learned with writing my first feature was what worked for me. Like I guarantee you most people, if they tried to do it exactly how I just described me doing it, probably wouldn't like it that much. Because everyone needs to write differently. Like, you know, there's no one way to do it. So I think that's the most important thing, is to figure out what works for you specifically and to not hold yourself to some standard of some other person.
Yeah. How would you, suggest someone find what works for them? Just keep writing, or?
I think just trying stuff until it feels right, which it sucks because that takes a lot of effort and it's not like some easy way to do it. But listen to interviews with writers about what they do. And try some of that stuff out, because before I tried to write features and just writing in general, I tried like the specific outlining stuff, and then I tried just like general whatever, and I tried a lot of stuff, and then finally, just on that feature, that was just what worked, and it was working, and I was like, wait, this is good. This is what I want.
Yeah.
But I think just trial and error, and don't stress out too much about it.
Definitely.
And you can pick and choose what you like from. Try outlining, be like, I really, really like doing the skeleton outline, but I don't really like doing the beats. Or conversely, like, I really like doing this, but I want to get more specific with the outlining before I jump in, or,
One thing I found really helpful, and I'm not sure, I think most people don't do this, maybe some, but I use, like, the record function on my phone. Or not record, but, like, voice to text. And for, like, I time myself for, like, 20, 30 minutes, and I don't stop talking about the story. So I go... So here's, this character does this and that. Oh, and maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe we do this. And I compile it into one giant, messy paragraph and condense it into some kind of story and then write from there. I found it to be really helpful. And it sounds strange, but it works for me. And I just kept doing it. So I think it really is just about, having like a personal way in and get words onto the page. So.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, absolutely.
Octavian, so after film school, you're going to go on that road trip. What are 3 things you're going to bring with you on that road trip that you can't live without?
Okay. The teddy bear that I bring with me everywhere that I've had since I was a little kid. I'm trying to think of, like, a good book.
What would be a book you'd want to bring?
I mean, I gifted you Pet Sematary because that's my favorite.
Yeah.
And I might take that one. But you know what? It's funny. I have been thinking about this a lot, what I'm going to take with me. Because it is kind of like, I do have things. So I mean, I guess I gotta take my camera.
What camera do you use, by the way?
Right now I have a Canon R5C.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, which I don't have cine lenses for. On the equipment end, I have some lighting stuff here. I don't have a lot of camera stuff here right now. Which I should probably change. But I did. I recently got a Bolex 16mm film camera.
Ooh.
And I need to make sure it works. Like, all of the mechanisms and everything I've like checked out works well, so I think it does. But I have to run some film through it and get it developed and see what happens.
That'd be sick.
But yeah, I really want to be shooting on film soon because it looks like so much fun.
Yeah.
It also looks great. It looks great just sitting there on in my room.
Great addition.
Because I was just like watching for one on eBay for like a year, and then finally one popped up. It was like $100, and I was like, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know what? I'll say that one. Teddy bear, my Bolex camera, and then I'm gonna go with the Canadian flag that I have on my wall.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
So where are you gonna take this van? Are you just around the States, or are you driving around?
I'm gonna
other
drive.
countries?
Well, so that's the thing. It's really an embarrassment for me personally. I've been to every single state in the contiguous U.S., and I've not even gotten close to going to all of the provinces and territories of Canada, which is really awful of me. But it's like bigger, and there's not as much like in between the cities, and
yeah.
So I'm gonna do some Canada exploration, and then I'll drive around the U.S. a bunch, and hopefully by that point our cohort will be kind of spread around probably the coasts. I'm sure some people are gonna pop over to New York.
Yeah.
And I can kind of bounce between and say hi to people and go on little trips with people and have a good time.
That would be sick. How long do you plan on doing this?
I have no idea. A year at least, and probably 2 years max. It's not something I necessarily want to like do forever. But yeah, ideally I can just be driving around and just making films and doing film festivals and yeah, my priority right now is on becoming a better like artist. I want to be a great artist eventually. And that's the thing that I'm really trying to put my focus on, because I think the career stuff, I mean, it's its own animal obviously, but it matters less to me in terms of like what I want for my life, as opposed to like being good at storytelling and telling really great stories.
So what would be 3 advice you give our listeners who wants to be better artists and tell better stories?
So I would say like listen to yourself, because I think there's an instinct to listen to other people telling you, again, this is how you write, this is how you make movies, this is how you build a career, this is how you do all this stuff. And no one really knows. Even the successful people don't know. I couldn't tell somebody how to get into USC today, because a big part of it's luck. In a similar way that a lot of people who have made it, quote unquote, probably maybe couldn't do it again, just because you have to be there at the right time and be doing the right stuff. Now, there are super talented people who I'm sure would rise to the top no matter what, but the path of getting there, you can't be instructed to it, because it's not something that anybody knows. And the people who say that they know it, I think, are bullshit. So in general, pay attention to what you like and what you want to do, and understand and try to enjoy that there is no road to where you're trying to get to. It's kind of a big open ocean and you're sailing. So go with the wind, go where you want to go. And just try to enjoy it above all, because I mean, if you just rush through all of it and do, and you hate it and you stress yourself out and you burn yourself out, and you don't want to hit 26 and hate film and be all jaded. We're in this because we love it, and so keep loving it. Do whatever it takes to stay in love. And that's what I'll say. That's my advice.
That's very beautiful.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on our podcast today.
Thank you for having me. I feel like I probably will be getting in trouble with USC.
Nah, you
after
won't.
This.
Maybe they'll change their policies because of.
I'm sure Carol's watching. Is she still around actually?
I think she's leaving soon.
I think so. Well, good luck to you, Carol, and to whoever's next. Please don't get me whacked.